Hey everybody, this video is going to be a quick guide to learning points. First, we'll look at what they are and how to use them, then how they are gained, and lastly, what you should be looking to use them on. Learning points are a system that helps you progress through the game faster by allowing you to finish the progress of a node on your Destiny board. So you'll notice whenever you click on a node in your Destiny board, there will be this little line around 20% of the way through the level. This line represents the learning point threshold. If you reach fame up to that line, you can then use learning points to skip the rest of the level. This allows you to progress through those levels much faster, and as such, they are a very valuable resource. To use learning points, you have two options. The first is to click on the node that you want to level, and once the fame has reached that threshold, the learn button right under the bar where the fame is will turn red and you can click it to finish the rest of the level. Alternatively, if you want to do this in a more automatic fashion, you can go up to the top right hand corner of your Destiny board and there will be an auto learn button there. If you enable this button, any node that has the auto learn enabled on it will automatically use the learning points and progress the level once they reach that threshold. So in order to get this auto learn to work, you have to both check the check mark at the top right hand of the Destiny board and the check mark at the bottom right of the specific node that you want to auto learn. The amount of learning points needed to get to the next level is not a base amount, rather it scales based on the amount of fame needed to reach that next level. So the more fame needed to reach the next level, the more learning points you'll have to use. However, learning points get more efficient the more fame is needed. So the higher the level of a node, the more fame it's going to take to level it up, and so the more efficient it is to use learning points on that node. So just keep this in mind for when we get to the last section, looking at how you should be looking to use your learning points. There are two ways that one gains learning points. First off, every character that activates a 30 days worth of premium for the first time will receive a lump sum of 200 learning points. The second way is more simply, learning points are gained every single day. If you have premium active on a character, you will automatically receive 30 learning points every single day, regardless of anything. You could literally not log on that day and you'd still get your 30 learning points. For non-premium characters, you get 10 learning points a day, and they are attached to the daily challenge. Every day that you complete this key challenge, you will get 10 learning points added to your character. Don't worry though, the 1,200 keys are very easy to get. If you basically do any activity in the game, you can usually get it within half an hour to an hour. So obviously, learning points are an incredibly valuable resource. They basically allow you to progress any part of your account like 5 times faster. So what should you be using your learning points on? Now that answer is going to depend mainly on you and what you like about the game or what you like doing. However, there are generally some things that are better to use them on than others. So in your Destiny board, you generally have 4 different categories of nodes or things to level. You have combat, you have gathering, refining, and crafting. Let's start with combat since it's the simplest. You never want to use learning points on combat. Generally speaking, you want to reserve learning points for the things that are the hardest to level, and combat fame is by far the easiest thing to come by in the game in terms of fame, making combat the easiest to level up, and so you don't want to use learning points for it. That being said, if you as a player know that you really are not interested in any of the gathering, refining, or crafting parts of the game and all you want to do is combat-based activities, then by all means it's more than fine to use learning points on this because you're not going to use them on anything that's harder to level. In fact, I use all of my learning points basically on combat at this point because everything else I've already got to a level that I'm happy with, or I'm not planning on doing it. One thing to note, if you are going to use learning points on combat, to make sure to never use any learning points on the mastery, always use it on the specialization. So don't use it on the bow fighter node, use it on the warbow combat specialist node. Moving on to gathering. Gathering is probably the best thing to use learning points on, however you need to do it in a specific way. So gathering and refining nodes work a little bit differently than all the other nodes in the Destiny board. For gathering and refining, the first level in a node will unlock that tier's gathering or refining. So for gathering, unlocking the first level of a node will unlock that tier's gathering gear, such as the tool, which is a really important piece of gear. However, further levels in that node only slightly increase the speed of gathering and slightly increase the yield of gathering for that specific resource. Basically, you don't really have to understand that, but what you need to know is that the first levels are incredibly important, whereas all the levels after that aren't very important. So when it comes to using learning points, the absolute best use of learning points is to jump to the next tier, to the next level and the next node in the tree. You want to use your learning points to get the first level of every tier of gathering. For refining, you can say basically the exact same thing about crafting, however, to a much less extreme. The first levels are important, but not nearly as important as the gathering ones, since you don't rely on the gathering tools to do basically everything. And the further levels past the first level in the refining nodes are probably more valuable than the further levels in the gathering nodes. Last but not least, we have crafting, and crafting is very classically a silver sink, a time sink, and a very much late game activity in Albion Online. Early on, crafting is a little bit rough, but when you get really late game, it can get very insane. As such, using learning points to accelerate through the early and mid levels and get to those high levels as fast as possible is extremely valuable. Crafting, in my opinion, is probably the second best way to use learning points after getting those first initial levels in gathering, as the faster you get to late game crafting, the better. Again, similar to combat, make sure you are never using any of your learning points in the mastery nodes, but using them in the specialist nodes out on the outside. So do not use any points into the bow crafter node, instead use them in something like the longbow crafting specialist node. So taking that all together, what should you actually use your learning points on? Well, it's going to depend on what you want to focus on. If you are interested in doing everything in the game, combat, crafting, gathering, and refining, this is what I would say is a generally good hierarchy on what to use your learning points on first. Start with those next tier of gathering nodes, getting yourself to the next tools, then focus on crafting, the specialization in the crafting, then is refining, then you can come back to gathering and get all of those nodes leveled up to 100, and then all the way last is combat. Obviously though, use your learning points how you want to use them. Use them for the activities that you enjoy the most or that you want to focus on. Okay, and that is a quick guide to learning points. I hope this video helped you out learn about learning points. If it did, do all the things you do to YouTube videos, and I will see you in the next one.